In the 1,970 seconds, Venezuela experienced a significant economic boom due to its oil reserves. Despite its wealth, Venezuela was not a major producer of illicit drugs during this period. However, its geographical characteristics made it vulnerable to drug trafficking. Venezuela's extensive coastline provided ample opportunity for smugglers. Its porous borders with Colombia further facilitated the movement of illegal substances. These factors made Venezuela an attractive transit point for emerging Colombian drug cartels. The Venezuela-Colombia border was characterized by its extensive length and limited surveillance capabilities. This lack of monitoring created opportunities for the transit of illegal goods. Cocaine was one of the primary illicit commodities trafficked across the border. Drug trafficking organizations took advantage of the border's geographical vulnerabilities. The border region became a key area for illegal activities due to these factors. Venezuela experienced a strong economic period during the oil boom in the 1,980 seconds. This economic prosperity attracted significant international trade. The increase in trade included both legal and illegal activities. The booming trade environment provided cover for drug smuggling operations. During the 1,980 seconds, Colombian cartels like Medellin and Cali rose to power. These cartels significantly increased cocaine flow through Venezuela. Venezuela became a key transit point for drug trafficking routes. The cocaine was primarily destined for the United States and Europe. In the 1,980 seconds, low-level corruption became prevalent among Venezuelan officials. This corruption allowed drug cartels to exploit Venezuela's existing infrastructure. Officials often ignored smuggling activities, facilitating the cartel's operations. This environment transformed Venezuela into a key transit point for drug trafficking. During the 1,980 seconds, drug transit routes were expanding. Venezuela engaged in cooperative efforts with U.S. anti-drug agencies like the DEA. This collaboration aimed to counter the increasing drug trafficking. However, Venezuela's role in these anti-drug operations was relatively limited. During the 1,980 seconds, Venezuela played a relatively minor role in the global cocaine trade. Venezuela's share of global cocaine transit was estimated to be between 5% and 10%. This volume was significantly less compared to the direct trafficking routes originating from Colombia. Colombia served as the primary source for cocaine, overshadowing Venezuela's emerging transit role. Venezuela's involvement indicated a nascent stage in its development as a transit point for drug trafficking. Venezuela faced significant economic downturns during the 1,990 seconds. These downturns created economic vulnerabilities within the country. The vulnerabilities made Venezuela susceptible to external influences. Drug trafficking organizations sought safe havens during this period. Venezuela's economic instability increased its attractiveness as a haven for such organizations. The 1,992 coup attempt, led by Hugo Chavez, underscored significant political instability in Venezuela. This instability created additional challenges for the nation. These challenges further complicated ongoing efforts to combat drug trafficking within the country. Political turmoil diverted resources and attention from anti-drug initiatives. The intensification of Colombia's civil war occurred in the 1,990 seconds. Armed groups like the FARC sought refuge in Venezuelan territory. This cross-border movement was driven by the conflict's escalation. Drug trafficking became a key funding source for these groups. The illicit drug trade supported their operations and sustained the conflict. The situation highlights the complex dynamics of civil conflicts and cross-border issues. In the late 1,990 seconds, allegations surfaced regarding the Venezuelan military's involvement. These allegations centered on the military's role in safeguarding drug trafficking routes. This suggested a potential collaboration between state actors and the drug trade. However, the evidence supporting these claims remained limited and inconclusive. In the late 1,990 seconds, Venezuela's role in the South American cocaine trade significantly increased. Venezuela's share of the cocaine trade in South America grew to approximately 15–20%. This growth indicates a substantial increase in Venezuela's importance as a transit country for cocaine. The rise in transit activity suggests a shift in drug trafficking routes or operational strategies. This period marks a notable change in the dynamics of the regional drug trade involving Venezuela. The increased percentage highlights Venezuela's emerging role in facilitating the movement of cocaine. The 1,998 election of Hugo Chavez represented a major turning point in Venezuelan politics. Chávez's victory signaled a shift away from established political norms and policies. His administration brought about changes in Venezuela's foreign policy strategies. Venezuela's approach to international relations was significantly altered under Chávez. Drug enforcement policies also underwent substantial modifications. These shifts marked a departure from previous approaches to both domestic and international affairs. In 2005, Venezuela expelled the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. The expulsion was based on accusations of espionage against the DEA. This action reduced U.S. oversight of drug-related activities within Venezuela. The reduced oversight created an environment that facilitated increased drug trafficking. In the 2000s, Venezuela became a central point in the air bridge for cocaine trafficking. This air bridge facilitated cocaine flights originating from Colombia. These flights were routed towards Central America and Europe. Venezuela's role facilitated direct transportation routes for the illegal drug trade. The Cartel of the Suns is allegedly linked to high-ranking military officials in Venezuela. The cartel's activities reportedly occurred in the 2000s. The organization is accused of facilitating drug shipments. These activities suggest state-sponsored drug trafficking. The alleged involvement of military officials implies a degree of protection and coordination. The Cartel of the Suns represents a serious breach of public trust and national security. Hugo Chávez formed alliances with the FARC during his presidency. Chávez declined to designate the FARC as a terrorist organization. This decision enabled the FARC to operate within Venezuelan territory. The FARC utilized Venezuelan territory for drug operations. Chávez's government provided ideological support to the FARC. These actions occurred primarily during the 2000s. In 2010, the U.S. estimated significant cocaine transit through Venezuela. Estimates suggest 200 to 300 tons of cocaine transited Venezuela annually. This volume represented a substantial portion of the global cocaine supply. Venezuela's transit volume accounted for up to 25% of the global supply. This highlights Venezuela's major role in the global cocaine trade during that period. During the 2000s, Venezuela emerged as a significant hub for money laundering activities. Drug profits were a primary source of illicit funds being laundered. The state-owned oil company, PDVSA, was used as a conduit for funneling these funds. This integration of drug money into PDVSA highlights the depth of corruption. The laundering activities demonstrated the integration of illicit drug money into the broader Venezuelan economy. Under Nicolás Maduro, Venezuela faced a severe economic collapse in the 2010 seconds. This economic crisis intensified Venezuela's role as a narco-state. Drug trafficking became a significant means of survival for the regime. The economic collapse created conditions where illegal activities thrived. The regime became increasingly reliant on drug trafficking for financial support. In 2020, the U.S. Justice Department issued indictments against Nicolás Maduro. The charges included narco-terrorism accusations. Maduro and his inner circle were implicated in collaborating with drug cartels. The alleged collaborations involved cartels such as Mexico's Sinaloa. During the 2010 seconds, Venezuela became a key transit point in the global drug trade. This involved the movement of drugs from South America towards Africa. From Africa, these drugs were then trafficked into Europe. This route expanded Venezuela's role in international drug trafficking networks. Groups such as Hezbollah were reportedly involved in these operations. The Venezuela, Africa, Europe route highlights the complex nature of global drug trafficking. UN reports from 2020 address Venezuela's involvement in global drug trafficking. These reports contradict official denials regarding the country's participation. The UN estimates Venezuela's contribution to be 10–15% of the global cocaine trade. This percentage signifies a substantial role in international drug distribution. The reports confirm Venezuela's ongoing engagement in these illicit activities. These findings highlight the country as a significant player in global drug flows. Sanctions and international isolation significantly impacted the Maduro regime in Venezuela during the 2010 seconds. These pressures led the regime to seek alternative revenue streams. One consequence was an increased reliance on illicit activities, particularly drug trafficking. This reliance exacerbated existing problems related to narcotics within the country. The situation contributed to the entrenchment of a narco-state dynamic. This dynamic further destabilized the region and complicated international relations. Venezuela primarily acts as a facilitator in the drug trade, rather than a direct producer. Its geographical location provides a strategic advantage for drug trafficking operations. Venezuela's weak institutional framework is exploited to profit from the drug trade. The country leverages its position to facilitate the movement of illicit substances. This facilitator role allows various actors to capitalize on the drug trade within and through Venezuela. The drug trade has generated billions in illicit funds for Venezuela. These funds contribute to domestic violence within the country. Corruption is fueled by the influx of illicit money. Venezuela faces increased international isolation as a result. This creates a vicious cycle of crime and instability. Venezuela experienced a period of democratic elections during the 1972nd and 1982nd. Leadership was determined through a democratic process. The political system was characterized by a two-party structure. This two-party system contributed to political stability in the country. This stability was maintained despite the emergence of drug-related threats. During the 1972nd and 1982nd, Venezuela experienced a rise in drug transit from Colombia. This increase in drug transit led to the emergence of corruption scandals within the country. Despite the corruption, these scandals did not directly cause coups or leadership changes. The Venezuelan government maintained control over the situation during this period. The corruption, while present, remained contained and did not destabilize the government. Terrorism in Venezuela during the 1972nd and 1982nd was characterized by a low level of activity. The primary actors involved were leftist guerrilla groups and the state. Clashes between these groups and the state were infrequent. These isolated incidents had minimal impact on the country's leadership. The sporadic violence did not significantly affect the electoral processes during this period. Venezuela experienced fair elections during the 1972nd and 1982nd. Despite these elections, significant economic inequality persisted. This inequality created underlying instability within the country. The burgeoning drug trade had an indirect influence on this instability. Economic disparities made the population more vulnerable to negative influences. These factors collectively sowed the seeds for future challenges in Venezuela. The Caracazo riots were triggered by the implementation of IMF-backed austerity measures in Venezuela. These measures exacerbated existing social discontent among the Venezuelan population. Drug-related corruption indirectly fueled the unrest, contributing to the overall instability. The Caracazo riots marked a turning point, leading to significant political changes in Venezuela's future. In 1992, Hugo Chavez spearheaded coup attempts against President Perez of Venezuela. The stated justification for these actions was widespread corruption within the Perez administration. Accusations included drug-related graft, suggesting involvement in narcotics trafficking. Chavez's movement gained support due to public perceptions of elite ties to Colombian cartels. These factors contributed to a climate of instability and ultimately led to the failed coups. Hugo Chavez secured victory in the 1998 Venezuelan election through democratic means. His campaign heavily emphasized anti-corruption reforms as a central promise. Chavez effectively leveraged widespread public dissatisfaction with corruption. Public discontent was also fueled by growing concerns related to drug issues. The anti-corruption platform resonated strongly with Venezuelan voters. This platform was a key factor in Chavez's electoral success in 1998. During the 1992nd, FARC's activities extended across the border into Venezuela. These activities were primarily funded through drug trafficking operations. FARC's presence fueled an insurgency that destabilized the border region. This instability began to indirectly influence Venezuelan politics. Ultimately, FARC's actions impacted Venezuelan leadership and overall stability. Hugo Chavez secured re-election victories in Venezuela in 2000, 2006, and 2012. These electoral successes coincided with periods of significant oil booms in the country. Chavez strategically utilized oil revenues to fund and sustain various social programs. These social programs were instrumental in maintaining his power and popular support. His extended tenure occurred despite growing concerns from the international community. These concerns often related to governance, human rights, and democratic practices within Venezuela. In 2002, Hugo Chavez faced a coup attempt against his leadership. The coup was backed by opposition forces within Venezuela. There were allegations of involvement by U.S. elements in the coup. The event highlighted deep political divisions and external pressures on Chavez's government. The drug trade allegedly provided off-the-books funding to Chavez's regime in the 2000s. This funding was allegedly facilitated through military involvement in the drug trade. The funds helped sustain social programs initiated by the regime. These resources also contributed to the consolidation of power by Chavez. The off-the-books nature of the funding allowed for activities outside of formal oversight. This financial support was a significant factor during Chavez's rule in Venezuela. During the 2000s, Venezuela, under Chavez, allegedly maintained connections with various groups. Among these were the FARC, a Colombian group classified by the U.S. as drug-financed terrorists. Venezuela purportedly provided support to FARC, according to U.S. classifications. Additionally, Hezbollah cells, linked to Iran, were allegedly permitted to operate within Venezuela. These cells purportedly utilized drug routes as a source of funding for their activities. Chavez's administration faced increasing international scrutiny during the 2000s. Allegations of support for terrorist groups contributed to this pressure. Involvement in drug trafficking further intensified international concerns. These factors raised questions about the legitimacy of Venezuelan elections. Consequently, Venezuela's international relations were significantly impacted. Hugo Chavez's death in 2013 marked a turning point for Venezuela. Nicolás Maduro narrowly won the subsequent election, inheriting a nation on the brink. His election triggered widespread protests across the country. These protests were fueled by a rapidly deteriorating economic situation. Drug corruption significantly contributed to the economic collapse. Economic mismanagement further exacerbated the crisis in Venezuela. U.S. indictments allege the involvement of Maduro's inner circle in narco-trafficking during the 2010 seconds. The indictments suggest that narco profits were used to secure loyalty within the regime. These funds were allegedly utilized to manipulate and rig elections. This demonstrates a deep connection between the Venezuelan regime and the drug trade. During the 2010 seconds, Venezuela faced increasing international sanctions. Maduro's regime strengthened alliances with Iran and Hezbollah to circumvent these sanctions. This collaboration facilitated various forms of sanctions evasion. Activities included laundering money derived from drug trafficking. This shift signified a move towards reliance on illicit networks for economic survival. In 2019, a coup attempt occurred in Venezuela, led by Juan Guaidó. This coup attempt received support from the United States. The coup ultimately failed to remove Nicolás Maduro from power. Drug-related sanctions were imposed, contributing to Maduro's isolation. The isolation led to the adoption of increasingly authoritarian tactics. Increased repression was used to maintain control in Venezuela. The 2024 Venezuelan election, resulting in Maduro's disputed win, faced widespread fraud allegations. Allegations include covert funding from the drug trade, influencing the electoral process. Accusations of terrorism further marred the election's legitimacy. These factors collectively undermine the democratic process in Venezuela. The integrity and fairness of the election results have been widely questioned internationally. Drug trade activities have led to the corruption of institutions within Venezuela. These illicit funds have been used to support and sustain specific regimes. This corruption and funding have contributed to the erosion of democratic norms. Alleged links to terrorism have incited coups within the country. These links have also provoked international backlash against Venezuela. Venezuela has transitioned from a stable democracy to a hybrid authoritarian regime. This shift has been influenced by various factors, including drug money. Terrorism ties have also contributed to the change in Venezuela's political landscape. International pressures have further exacerbated the situation. These combined elements have resulted in the establishment of authoritarianism in Venezuela. Venezuela's leadership leverages international alliances to maintain power. Key alliances include military support from Russia. China provides financial support through loans. These alliances help the leadership navigate internal and external pressures. The leadership's approach involves antagonism towards the United States, resulting in sanctions. Venezuela's economy is heavily dependent on its oil reserves. The country relies on economic agreements with China, specifically debt for oil arrangements. Russia provides investment in Venezuela's economy. The drug trade contributes illicit funds to the Venezuelan economy. This illegal activity occurs partly due to the impact of U.S. sanctions. These factors highlight key aspects of Venezuela's economic landscape within a pestle analysis framework. Populist policies in Venezuela aim to garner domestic support. However, alliances with nations like Iran can lead to accusations of anti-Semitism. These accusations may stem from geopolitical tensions and ideological differences. Opposition from the United States contributes to migration crises. U.S. opposition may involve sanctions or diplomatic pressure. Venezuela faces technological challenges due to geopolitical isolation. Russia and China supply technology, including surveillance and military tech. This tech support aims to counter potential cyber threats from the U.S. Limited international collaboration hinders domestic innovation and development. Venezuela's oil extraction practices, particularly with Russia and China, disregard environmental sustainability. U.S. sanctions restrict Venezuela's access to green technologies, hindering environmental progress. Venezuela is viewed as non-compliant in UN climate forums, indicating a lack of commitment to global environmental agreements. These factors combine to create significant environmental challenges for Venezuela. As highlighted by Pestel analysis, Venezuela actively circumvents U.S. and UN sanctions through strategic alliances. Key partnerships include agreements and collaborations with Iran and Russia. These pacts enable Venezuela to maintain economic and political stability despite international pressure. The legitimacy of Venezuela's leadership is frequently challenged in international courts. These legal challenges stem from disputes over election validity and human rights concerns. Venezuela maintains a policy of no formal diplomatic ties with Israel. The primary objective is to preserve Bolivarian socialism. This involves strategic planning and execution to maintain the current political system. Mission analysis focuses on identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities. Most likely courses of action are evaluated to ensure mission success. Venezuela aims to secure economic lifelines through loans from China and Russia. Venezuela seeks to foster ideological solidarity with nations like Iran. Venezuela is trying to maintain international legitimacy through the United Nations. Venezuela aims to isolate perceived foes, including the U.S. and Israel. Venezuela employs diplomatic diversification as a key strategy. This includes pursuing closer ties and potential membership with the BRICS economic bloc. Resource bartering, specifically oil for support, is another tactic. Venezuela exchanges oil resources in return for political and economic backing. Narrative warfare is utilized to shape international perception. This involves portraying the United States as an aggressor to garner sympathy and deflect criticism. Venezuela employs a range of tactics to navigate geopolitical challenges. These tactics include conducting military exercises with Russia. Venezuela also engages in joint ventures and collaborations with China. Covert operations with Iran represent another aspect of Venezuela's strategic actions. Venezuela utilizes its veto power in the UN to block resolutions and legally defies U.S. sanctions. Venezuela's alliances with Russia and China reinforce anti-Western narratives. These alliances appeal to leftist political bases within Venezuela. However, these alliances also alienate segments of the population that are pro-US. This division highlights the complex social and political landscape within Venezuela. Venezuela's political landscape involves strategic alliances with Russia and China. These alliances provide Venezuela with veto power in international forums. Iran offers anti-imperialist solidarity to Venezuela, strengthening bilateral ties. Hostility towards the U.S. and Israel contributes to political polarization within Venezuela. Venezuela's economy relies on investment from China and Russia. Parallel economies are supported by Iran. U.S. sanctions significantly impede economic growth. UN aid provides administrative support but is insufficient to address the economic crisis. Venezuela's governance relies on centralized control mechanisms. Russian and Chinese technology supports these centralized governance efforts. Iran provides assistance in establishing and maintaining shadow networks. The Venezuelan government strategically navigates UN bureaucracy to gain advantages. Venezuela utilizes loopholes via Russia and China to circumvent U.S. UN regulations. These actions allow Venezuela to bypass international sanctions and restrictions. Collaborations with Iran further demonstrate a disregard for international norms. These collaborations often involve activities that contravene international agreements. There is a complete absence of a regulatory framework governing interactions with Israel. This lack of regulatory framework indicates a deliberate policy regarding relations with Israel. Venezuela maintains strong alliances with key global powers. Russia provides military support and cooperation. China offers economic partnership and investment. Iran shares ideological alignment and mutual support. Venezuela's over-reliance on autocratic allies is a key weakness. This dependence isolates Venezuela from potential Western aid and support. Alleged links to drug trafficking and terrorism further damage Venezuela's international credibility. These associations negatively impact diplomatic relations and economic opportunities. Such factors hinder Venezuela's ability to secure favorable international agreements and investments. Venezuela can deepen its integration within the BRICS economic alliance. This integration primarily involves strengthening ties with Russia and China. The goal is to foster economic revival through these strategic partnerships. Venezuela can also leverage the UN to unite the Global South against perceived U.S. dominance. Escalating U.S. sanctions pose a significant threat to Venezuela. These sanctions could destabilize the current Maduro regime. Regime change efforts by external actors also present a destabilizing threat. Both sanctions and regime change attempts could worsen Venezuela's existing economic crisis. In the 1,970 seconds, Venezuela's geographical location made it a potential transit point for various activities. The effectiveness of border control is significantly influenced by the technology available for surveillance. During this period, surveillance technology was relatively underdeveloped. Underdeveloped surveillance technology posed challenges to effective border control. These challenges made it difficult to monitor and control the movement of goods and people across Venezuelan borders. Consequently, Venezuela's role as a transit point was amplified due to these technological limitations. The Venezuela-Colombia border region presented significant challenges for effective border control. The area's rugged terrain made surveillance and patrol operations particularly difficult. This challenging environment was exploited by drug trafficking organizations. The difficult terrain provided cover and concealment for illicit activities. This situation facilitated the movement of illegal substances across the border. Therefore, the geography of the border region directly contributed to the escalation of drug trafficking. In the 1,980 seconds, Venezuela experienced a surge in petrodollar inflows. This influx created an environment conducive to illicit financial activities. The abundance of petrodollars made it easier to conceal the origins of funds. This situation inadvertently facilitated money laundering operations. The scale of petrodollar transactions provided cover for illegal financial flows. The economic climate allowed for the masking of illicit financial activities. Colombian cartels in the 1,980 seconds developed sophisticated logistics networks. These networks were designed for the efficient transportation of cocaine. A key transit point in these networks was Venezuela. Venezuela's geographical location facilitated movement of large quantities of cocaine. The cartels leveraged this strategic advantage to enhance their operations. This logistical efficiency was crucial for the cartel's success in drug trafficking. In 1,980 seconds, Venezuela, relatively low salaries for government officials created vulnerabilities. These low salaries made officials susceptible to bribery. Drug cartels exploited this vulnerability by offering bribes. Bribery served as an incentive for officials to overlook or facilitate cartel activities. This created a cycle of corruption within the Venezuelan government. The influx of drug money further destabilized the region. During the 1,980 seconds, Venezuela and the U.S. engaged in joint anti-drug efforts. However, the effectiveness of these efforts was limited. A key factor hindering success was the limited intelligence sharing between the two nations. Without sufficient shared intelligence, operations were less targeted. This lack of information exchange reduced the impact on drug trafficking networks. Improved intelligence sharing could have significantly enhanced anti-drug outcomes. During the 1,980 seconds, monitoring drug transit through Venezuela posed significant challenges. A primary obstacle was the absence of sophisticated tracking technology. This technological gap hindered accurate assessment of drug transit volumes. The lack of real-time data made it difficult to intercept drug shipments effectively. Limited surveillance capabilities further complicated interdiction efforts. Consequently, the true scale of drug trafficking remained largely unquantified. Venezuela faced a severe economic crisis in the 1,990 seconds. This crisis led to a significant reduction in available resources. Law enforcement agencies were particularly affected by budget cuts. Reduced funding hindered efforts to effectively combat drug trafficking. The economic downturn weakened the state's capacity to maintain law and order. In 1992, Venezuela experienced significant political instability. This instability diverted focus and resources away from anti-drug efforts. Reduced attention to law enforcement created an opportunity for illicit activities. Drug trafficking organizations were able to expand their operation. Political turmoil indirectly contributed to the flourishing of the drug trade. The Colombian Civil War in the 1990 seconds led to widespread displacement of people. Displacement disrupted traditional livelihoods and economic stability. Some displaced individuals turned to drug trafficking as a survival strategy. Drug trafficking offered a means to secure income and basic necessities amidst conflict. In the late 1990 seconds, the Venezuelan military exerted significant control over key infrastructure. This control included strategic locations such as ports and airports. The military's oversight of these areas facilitated the illicit shipment of drugs. This situation created opportunities for the military to engage in or enable drug trafficking activities. Increased cocaine demand in the US and Europe fueled drug trafficking. This demand led to the expansion of drug trafficking routes. Venezuela became a key transit point in the late 1990 seconds. Existing routes were expanded to accommodate increased drug flow. The expansion aimed to meet the growing market demand. South America played a central role in cocaine production and distribution. In 1998, Venezuela experienced a significant political shift with the election of Hugo Chavez. Chavez's socialist ideology influenced his perspective on international relations. His government developed a suspicion towards US-led anti-drug efforts in the region. This suspicion led to a notable change in Venezuela's approach to anti-drug cooperation. Venezuela began to distance itself from previous collaborative efforts with the United States. In 2005, Venezuela expelled the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. This expulsion led to a reduction in information sharing between Venezuela and the US. Cooperation between the two countries in combating drug trafficking was also diminished. The decreased collaboration inadvertently benefited drug cartels operating in the region. Cartels were able to operate with less risk of detection and intervention. The expulsion had negative consequences for anti-drug efforts. The air bridge refers to a clandestine aerial drug trafficking route. Venezuela's vast and sparsely populated areas were exploited. These areas provided ideal locations for clandestine airstrips. These airstrips were crucial for the air bridge's operation. The air bridge operated extensively during the 2000s. The Cartel of the Suns involved high-ranking officials. These officials were located in Venezuela during the 2000s. Their high ranks provided immunity from prosecution. This immunity allowed them to operate with impunity. The cartel's activities were enabled by the protection offered by these officials. Hugo Chavez formed an alliance with the FARC during his presidency. This alliance provided Chavez with a strategic advantage. The alliance supported Chavez's efforts to challenge U.S. influence in the region. FARC served as a partner in Chavez's geopolitical strategy. The alliance occurred in the context of the 2000s. The partnership aimed to counter U.S. hegemony in Latin America. In 2010, Venezuela became a significant transit point for cocaine. The large volume of cocaine passing through Venezuela had major implications. This high transit volume positioned Venezuela as a key player in the global drug trade. The country's role in drug trafficking had far-reaching consequences. Venezuela's involvement significantly impacted international drug control efforts. PDVSA's financial operations lacked transparency during the 2000s. This lack of transparency made PDVSA vulnerable to illicit activities. Drug money could be easily laundered through PDVSA's financial system. The existing system provided an ideal vehicle for concealing the origins of illegal funds. This situation facilitated the integration of illicit proceeds into the legitimate economy. The economic crisis in Venezuela during the 2010 seconds created widespread hardship. This desperation led many Venezuelans to seek alternative means of survival. Drug trafficking emerged as one such alternative for some individuals. The crisis fostered an environment where illegal activities seemed like a viable option. This highlights the severe social consequences of economic collapse. In 2020, the U.S. issued indictments related to Venezuela. These indictments revealed the extensive involvement of the Maduro regime. The indictments specifically targeted drug trafficking activities. The U.S. action further isolated Venezuela on the international stage. The indictments highlighted the U.S. stance against the Maduro regime's alleged criminal activities. Venezuelan drug cartels expanded their operations in the 2010 seconds. This expansion involved establishing new drug trafficking routes. These routes extended to both Africa and Europe. The establishment of these routes increased the geographical reach of Venezuelan cartels. This intercontinental network facilitated broader distribution. The expansion marked a significant development in international drug trade. United Nations reports have independently verified Venezuela's involvement in the global drug trade. These reports contradict denials issued by the Venezuelan regime. The UN's findings highlight a discrepancy between official statements and actual activities. This independent confirmation underscores the importance of international oversight. The report shed light on Venezuela's role in international drug trafficking networks. The UN's evidence-based assessment provides a critical perspective on the issue. Sanctions imposed in the 2010 seconds limited Venezuela's engagement with global financial institutions. This restriction reduced Venezuela's ability to access international financial markets. Consequently, Venezuela faced increased difficulty in securing legitimate financial resources. The reduced access to legitimate finance led to a greater dependence on alternative revenue streams. This dependence made Venezuela more vulnerable to illicit sources of revenue generation. The shift towards illicit revenue sources had significant implications for the Venezuelan economy. Venezuela has assumed a role as a facilitator in the global drug trade. This role has positioned Venezuela as a key enabler of illicit drug trafficking operations. Venezuela's involvement has significantly contributed to the expansion and perpetuation of the global drug trade. Venezuela's actions have resulted in substantial and far-reaching consequences on an international scale. The drug trade generates substantial illicit funds within Venezuela. These illicit funds contribute to widespread corruption. The influx of illegal money exacerbates violence within the country. Corruption and violence undermine the rule of law. The drug trade's financial impact weakens Venezuela's legal and governmental structures. Venezuela's political landscape in the 1980 seconds was dominated by a two-party system. This system offered a certain level of political stability during that time. However, the two-party structure constrained the breadth of political competition. The limited competition also stifled innovation within the political sphere. Corruption scandals in Venezuela during the 1970 seconds and 1980 seconds had a profound impact. These scandals significantly eroded public trust in the government. They fostered a climate of impunity, where accountability was lacking. The widespread corruption undermined the integrity of public institutions. Terrorist activity in Venezuela during the 1970 seconds and 1980 seconds was limited. This activity did not constitute a major threat to the Venezuelan government. However, the presence of terrorism contributed to a general feeling of insecurity among the population. The limited scale of terrorist acts suggests localized or isolated incidents. The overall impact was more psychological, creating unease rather than destabilizing the state. Economic inequality in Venezuela during the 1970 seconds and 1980 seconds generated widespread resentment. This frustration stemmed from the unequal distribution of wealth and opportunities. The economic disparity made the population more vulnerable to populist appeals. Populist leaders often capitalized on this discontent to gain political support. The Caracazo riots in 1989 exposed deep social discontent in Venezuela. These riots highlighted the fragility of the democratic system at the time. The events revealed underlying tensions and economic pressures. The Caracazo serves as a critical historical event demonstrating social instability. In 1992, Venezuela experienced a series of failed coup attempts. These coups highlighted significant divisions within the Venezuelan military. The events also revealed the underlying instability and fragility of the government. The failed coups collectively underscored the political turmoil of the time. In 1998, Venezuela faced significant issues of corruption and mismanagement. Many Venezuelans were dissatisfied with the existing political situation. Hugo Chavez launched an anti-corruption platform as part of his campaign. This platform aimed to address the widespread corruption perceived by the public. Chavez's message resonated strongly with a populace weary of corruption. The promise of reform and accountability became a key factor in his political success. During the 1990 seconds, the FARC exerted influence in Venezuelan border areas. This influence undermined the authority of the Venezuelan government in these regions. The reduced governmental control led to a security vacuum. The FARC exploited this vacuum to expand its operations and presence. Chavez's re-elections in the 2000s reflected a significant level of public support. These electoral victories solidified Chavez's position in Venezuelan politics. However, The re-elections also sparked debate regarding the integrity of the electoral process. Concerns were raised about the fairness and transparency of the electoral system during this period. The 2002 coup attempt in Venezuela significantly heightened societal divisions. It deepened the existing polarization within Venezuelan society. The coup attempt exacerbated the divide between those who supported Hugo Chavez. It also intensified the conflict with those who opposed Chavez's government. Off-the-books funding enabled Chavez to circumvent standard budgetary procedures. This mechanism allowed for expenditure without typical oversight. The funding lacked accountability measures. This occurred primarily during the 2000s in Venezuela. Venezuela's alleged ties to terrorism in the 2000s had significant repercussions. These connections negatively impacted Venezuela's standing in the international community. The allegations led to heightened surveillance and criticism from the United States. Other nations also increased their scrutiny of Venezuela's activities. The situation strained diplomatic relations between Venezuela and several countries. These events underscore the importance of adhering to international norms regarding terrorism. During the 2000s, Venezuela faced increasing international pressure. This pressure significantly hindered Venezuela's access to global markets. The restricted access made international trade more challenging for the country. Foreign investment inflows into Venezuela were also negatively affected. Reduced foreign investment further strained the Venezuelan economy. The Venezuelan economy experienced a severe collapse in the 2010 seconds. This collapse triggered a major humanitarian crisis within the country. The crisis led to widespread shortages of basic necessities like food and medicine. Hyperinflation eroded the value of the currency, making daily life increasingly difficult. As a result, a significant portion of the population immigrated from Venezuela. This immigration further strained the country's resources and human capital. Narco profits became a significant factor in Venezuelan politics during the 2010 seconds. These illicit funds provided a crucial financial lifeline to the Maduro regime. This support helped the regime maintain its grip on power. The narco profits were especially important given the severe economic crisis in Venezuela. These funds effectively counteracted the economic pressures that could have destabilized the government. Sanctions evasion refers to the methods used to bypass or avoid international sanctions. Venezuela employed various strategies to circumvent sanctions imposed during the 2010 seconds. These efforts highlight the regime's resolve to maintain its position despite external pressures. Evasion tactics were aimed at ensuring the regime's survival amid international isolation. In 2019, Venezuela experienced a series of coup attempts against the government. These coup attempts ultimately failed to achieve their objective of overthrowing the existing regime. A significant consequence of the failed coups was the weakening of the opposition forces. The failed attempts diminished the opposition's credibility and organizational strength. Conversely, the unsuccessful coups served to consolidate the power of Nicolás Maduro. Maduro's government emerged stronger, having withstood the challenges to its authority. The 2024 elections in Venezuela were marred by fraud. These fraudulent activities significantly undermined the perceived legitimacy of the Maduro regime. The compromised elections further isolated Venezuela on the international stage. International observers and organizations have raised concerns about the fairness and transparency of the electoral process. Allegations of voter manipulation and suppression have been widely reported. The legitimacy of any government formed as a result of these elections is now heavily questioned. The erosion of democratic norms has significantly impacted Venezuela. This erosion has fostered an environment characterized by fear. Repression is a key element of the current climate. These factors combined undermine fundamental rights and freedoms. Venezuela has experienced a shift towards authoritarianism. This shift is characterized by the suppression of dissent. Human rights violations have increased as a result. These actions undermine democratic principles and freedoms. Venezuela maintains ties with Iran based on shared anti-Western ideologies. Venezuela and Iran also cooperate in the oil sector. Relations with Israel are hostile. This hostility stems from Venezuela severing ties with Israel in 2009 over the Gaza conflict. Venezuela's relationship with Iran carries potential risks for social cohesion. One factor is the anti-Israel stance often associated with Iran. This stance may exacerbate existing social divisions within Venezuela. Venezuela's engagement with the UN provides a veneer of social welfare initiatives. These initiatives can be viewed as attempts to bolster social support. However, the underlying tensions related to international alliances remain a concern. Threats analysis focuses on potential destabilizing factors affecting Venezuela. Escalating U.S. sanctions represent a significant external threat. Regime change efforts by external actors could further destabilize the Maduro regime. These factors may exacerbate the existing economic crisis within Venezuela. A potential détente with the U.S. could arise under new administrations. This détente could open avenues for improved international relations and trade. Venezuela can strategically exploit Iran's regional influence. Leveraging this influence may provide economic and political advantages. The administrative analysis focuses on Venezuela within the SPEAR framework. A key aspect of this analysis is the administrative boycott. The United States is subject to this administrative boycott. Israel is also subject to this administrative boycott. This boycott impacts administrative processes and interactions.